What would you do if your husband stole $60,000 from you while you were sleeping? No, seriously. Picture it. It's 3:12 a.m. You're deep in REM sleep, dreaming about absolutely nothing. Peaceful. Safe. Or at least, you think you are. Then the next day, you wake up to charges on your bank account that read like the shopping list of a billionaire with a boredom problem. Louis Vuitton, Saint Laurent, Emirates First Class. All in one night. All with your money. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Would you scream? Cry? Call the police? Divorce him on the spot? I laughed. And not because it was funny. Because what my husband didn't know, what made the entire thing ironic beyond belief, was that the debit card he used. Yeah, it wasn't what he thought it was. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind, because this story isn't just about theft. It's about betrayal, manipulation, image, pride, and yes, revenge. The kind of revenge you don't serve cold. You serve it scalding, with a credit card receipt and a fake signature. Let's start with the moment I realized I wasn't crazy. Because that's the first thing betrayal makes you question, right? Your sanity. I'm Natalie. 33 years old, 2 degrees, a full-time remote job as a data security analyst, which is important to note, because the man who tried to scam me out of 60 grand. He didn't just steal from his wife. He tried to steal from someone trained to catch people like him. I married Derek 3 years ago. On paper, he was perfect, 6'1", tailored suits, great teeth, a jawline that looked photoshopped in real life. Women fawned over him. Waiters remembered his name. He had this charisma that made you want to agree with him, even when he was dead wrong. And trust me, he was wrong a lot. But Derek didn't need to be right. He needed to look like he was winning. There's a difference. He was the kind of man who'd rather spend $800 on a designer belt than pay off his student loans, just so he could flex in a photo that would get 500 likes from people he barely knew. I used to think it was harmless. Everyone has their thing, right? For some it's coffee. For others, sneakers. For Derek, it was status. The appearance of wealth. Prestige. Luxury. And not just having it, but making sure everyone else knew he had it. I should have seen the signs. The way he'd forget his wallet at brunch and casually slide my card across the table with a wink. The way he'd post Instagram stories with my car, my apartment, my clothes in the background, but crop me out. But love makes you forgive things that hindsight loves to laugh at. And anyway, we were in therapy. We were working on things. At least I was. Derek was working on a lot of things, as I'd later find out. But not our marriage. So back to that night. It was a Wednesday, January 4th. I remember because I'd just gotten back from visiting my sister Sasha in LA, and I was tired. I'd flown in, unpacked, and crashed hard by 10 p.m. Derek wasn't home when I went to bed. He said he had a late meeting with a potential investor for his branding business. Don't ask. It was one of those self-invented roles that sound important but mean absolutely nothing. Anyway, I was asleep. Or mostly asleep. Until I heard it. The soft, unmistakable sound of a sock brushing against carpet. That whisper-thin shuffle you don't notice until you do. I opened one eye just enough to catch a shadow move across our bedroom. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But then I saw the silhouette, Derek, standing at my desk, facing away. He was hunched slightly, like he was concentrating on something. No light. Just the soft glow of my monitor, my locked monitor. He wasn't typing. He was holding something. My purse. And humming. I'm not exaggerating. He was humming. Softly. Like a man on a walk. Like someone at ease. That's what made it chilling. I thought about saying something. I almost did. But I didn't want to start a fight at 3 in the morning. I was too tired, too foggy, too emotionally drained to even pretend I had the energy for another one of his excuses. So I closed my eyes. And let him think I hadn't seen a thing. In the morning, he was gone. Left a sticky note on the fridge. Meeting. Back by 4. Love you. Classic Derek. He never texted. Never called. He left notes like we were in some cheesy rom-com. Not a crumbling marriage with a digital trail of red flags and overdraft fees. But here's the weird part. My debit card? Still there. In my wallet. In the same place I'd left it. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. Until I checked my phone. I had 6 push notifications from my bank. 6. The first one read, Alert. Purchase at Louis Vuitton. $2,695.34. Approved. The second. Alert. Purchase at Chanel. $4,221.89. Approved. Then Emirates Airlines. $19,800. First class ticket. And then more. Jewelry. Luggage. A hotel reservation in Paris. By the time I finished scrolling, I'd counted over $60,000 in charges. And every single one was approved. Now pause. Ask yourself, what would you do? Call your bank? Scream into a pillow? Confront him? I did the first 2. But I didn't confront him. Because I had one question burning in my brain. How? How did he do it? The card was never stolen. There was no login alert. No data breach on my end. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I don't reuse passwords. I don't keep autofill enabled. I have 2-factor authentication for everything, including my coffee machine. And yet somehow he'd made those charges. As if he had the card in hand. But he didn't. Or, did he? That's when the memory hit me. A flash from the night before. The way he stood by the desk. The sound of the printer. The printer? Yeah, that tiny hum. I'd ignored it. Thought nothing of it. But now, it clicked. He hadn't just taken my purse. He'd printed something. But what? And how? At this point, I was spiraling. I called the bank. 20 minutes of elevator music later, I finally got someone on the line. I explained everything. The charges. The fact that I had my card. You know what the rep said? Ma'am, these were card-present transactions. Card. Present. I asked, what does that mean? He said, it means the card was physically swiped, inserted, or tapped at the point of sale. Not online. I said, but I have the card. Long pause. Ma'am, he said, it's possible your card was cloned. Cloned. My stomach flipped. Suddenly, I remembered something Derek had joked about 2 months ago. We were watching a documentary about credit card fraud. He leaned over and said, you know, I bet I could do that. At the time, I laughed. Now? Not so funny. I asked the rep to freeze my account. He agreed. But then he said something that made my skin crawl. Just so you know, ma'am, before I freeze the account, another $6,000 charge was just approved. Gucci store. Manhattan. I live in New Jersey. And Derek? He wasn't in a meeting. He was on a spending spree. Using my money, my name, and apparently, my cloned card. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever watched someone move through your home like a stranger? Not an intruder. Not a burglar. But someone who shares your bed. Someone you've kissed. Trusted. Loved. That was Derek at 3:12 a.m. I didn't know it then, but I was watching the exact moment my husband became a thief. Or maybe he'd always been one, and I was just finally seeing him clearly. The night it happened, I'd gone to bed early. Exhausted. That heavy kind of tired where even brushing your teeth feels like a victory. Derek had said he'd be out late. Some client dinner in the city. I barely registered it. Just nodded and pulled the covers over my head. And then, sometime deep into the night, the shuffle. Not loud. Just the soft whisper of socked feet over carpet. A creak in the floorboard near the door. And then the hum. God, I'll never forget that. He was humming. Who hums while committing a felony? But I didn't sit up. I didn't speak. I did what most people wouldn't expect. I stayed still. Why? Because I didn't trust him. Not entirely. It's weird, isn't it? How your gut knows before your brain catches up. Before your heart's ready to accept it. I kept my eyes mostly closed, just enough of a slit to see his shadow. He was at my desk. My laptop was open. I'd left it charging before bed. Nothing unusual. Except, he wasn't typing. He wasn't checking emails. He was going through my purse. Now let me pause here and ask you, if you caught your partner digging through your stuff at 3 a.m., would you call them out? Would you demand answers? Or would you wait like I did and let the evidence build itself? That moment in bed, I made a choice. I chose silence. Because sometimes silence catches louder lies. He took my wallet, flipped through it, carefully. I could hear the leather flap open, cards shifting. And then, this part one nearly missed, he held my phone in one hand and lifted it toward my face. I watched frozen as he used my sleeping face to unlock my phone. Facial recognition. He knew the angles, the distance, the exact way to tilt it. Like he'd done it before. He wasn't just snooping. He was prepared. Then came the printer. Just one page. A soft mechanical sound and a quick beep. He took the page, folded it, slipped it into his coat. And then, he was gone. Out the door like he'd never been there. In the morning, everything seemed untouched. My wallet was closed. My phone was where I left it. The only clue was the scent of his cologne still lingering in the hallway, a brand he couldn't actually afford. I might have ignored it. Might have brushed it off as a weird dream. But then came the bank alerts. $60,000 drained like someone had cut an artery. And it hit me like a freight train. That wasn't just a shady moment in the night. It was the heist. A personal, surgical heist. The kind you only pull if you know the target intimately. And the part that scared me the most? He hadn't even bothered to cover his tracks. Because he didn't think I'd catch him. He didn't think I could. I stared at my phone, numb. The numbers didn't even feel real. $4,800 at Dior. $2,100 at some obscure luxury watch boutique in Soho. $1,300 at a high-end luggage store. And the final cherry on top? A first-class, one-way ticket to Paris. Paris. Let that sink in. He robbed me. And then booked himself a vacation. That's not just theft. That's a statement. Now let me ask you something, because I need to know I'm not crazy here. Who steals from their own wife and then goes shopping in plain sight? No burner card. No fake identity. Just Derek living his best life on my dime. I wasn't even angry yet. I was stunned. Hollow. There's a special kind of betrayal that hits when it's not some stranger behind a mask, but the person who says I love you before bed. And trust me, that kind of betrayal? It doesn't just hurt. It burns. But I wasn't about to let it end there. Not by a long shot. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my car keys, and drove straight to my sister Sasha's apartment across the river. Because if there was one person who would believe me, who wouldn't say I was being paranoid or overreacting, it was her. Sasha's the opposite of me. Sharp tongue. Zero tolerance for BS. The kind of person who reads a text once and already knows if you're lying. She opened the door in leggings and a face mask, holding a half-empty mug of tea. I didn't even say hello. I just handed her my phone. Look. She scrolled. Paused. Scrolled again. Then looked up, slow and cold. Did you call the cops? No. Why not? Because I need to be sure. She didn't ask what I meant. She just nodded, turned, and walked to her kitchen. Want tea, she called. Or tequila? Tequila. She poured 2 shots. We knocked them back. Then she said, deadpan. I told you not to marry a man who wears sunglasses indoors. I let out a weak laugh. You also told me not to marry a man who owns more rings than I do. Exactly. Then she sat down, pulled out her laptop, and started digging. Sasha's a web designer, but she's spent enough time helping me with pen testing and backdoor scans that she knows her way around a digital footprint. We checked my bank account together. Looked at timestamps, locations, merchant data. And that's when it clicked. The card wasn't stolen. It wasn't hacked. He had my number, my expiration date, my CVV. He'd copied everything. But there was no online trail. No digital breach. No phishing link. Which meant he'd done it manually. He'd physically read the card, memorized it, photographed it, printed it. Suddenly, the sound of the printer from that night made sense. And so did the folded paper he took with him. But there was something even stranger. I'd changed cards 2 weeks ago. Different number. Same bank. New expiration. The card in my wallet, the one he touched, was the old one. So how did he get the new number? I hadn't told him. I hadn't used it for anything except my phone bill, which I paid from my laptop. And my laptop? It auto-saved nothing. But you know what was left open? A PDF. The welcome document from my bank. Buried on page 2? My full card number. You ever want to scream at your past self? That moment felt like a punch to the chest. He didn't hack me. He just knew me. Knew my patterns. My routines. The way I'd leave files open, thinking it's just me here. He used that familiarity like a crowbar and pried his way into my life. But even then, something still didn't sit right. Because if he knew the number, why clone the card? Why go to a store and swipe it? Why not just buy everything online? Unless he wanted to be seen. He wanted to be there. To feel it. To live it. He wasn't just spending money. He was performing. And that's when I realized. This wasn't just about theft. This was about ego. About showing me what he could do. What he could take. And still get away with. At least, that's what he thought. But what came next? What he didn't know. That was going to change everything. And I wasn't going to stop him. Not yet. Because the more he spent, the more rope he gave me. And I was happy to let him hang himself with it. Do you know what it feels like to see your life savings vanish in less than 24 hours? No warning. No explanation. Just gone. $60,000. Swiped out like it never existed. That morning, sitting on my sister Sasha's couch, watching the numbers pile up in real time, I felt hollow. Not scared. Not even angry yet. Just blank. Like my brain couldn't process what was happening fast enough to feel anything. The bank app blinked up at me like a smug accomplice. Transaction after transaction, from cities I hadn't been to, stores I couldn't pronounce, products I couldn't even dream of buying for myself. And all of it under my name. I kept refreshing the screen, hoping it was a glitch. A tech hiccup. Maybe a system error. It wasn't. The money was real. The charges were real. The thief? Also real. And asleep somewhere on silk sheets, paid for with my debit card. Let me walk you through just a few of the transactions. Because this wasn't just about shopping. This was curated robbery. Derek didn't just want expensive things, he wanted things that made a statement. $5,420 at Louis Vuitton. $6,112 at Chanel, including a crocodile clutch that literally made me choke. $1,800 at Rimowa for 2 carry-ons. Not even full-size luggage. $3,000 at a luxury watch shop I didn't recognize. And the kicker. $19,800 for a first-class ticket to Paris. One way. Who spends 20 grand to fly alone to Paris? Derek, apparently. And not a single dollar was declined. I'd called my bank already. Locked my card. Placed a fraud report. But the damage was done. Still, I wasn't panicking. Not yet. Because I remembered something from my job. A small detail most people overlook. Transactions aren't instant. They look instant on your app, but in the back end? They go through a settlement process. It takes time. And time meant leverage. The moment I realized that, something clicked in my brain. I wasn't helpless. Not anymore. I could still turn this around if I moved fast. I told Sasha I needed space to think, and I meant it. My brain was on fire, racing through a mental flowchart of everything I'd learned in fraud detection and digital forensics. Patterns. Triggers. Reversal codes. I pulled out my laptop and opened 3 tabs. One for my bank portal. One for a forensic tracking tool I'd built in grad school. And one for coffee delivery. Because priorities. While I waited, Sasha sat beside me, arms crossed, watching me work like I was defusing a bomb. "You're being way too calm for someone who just got robbed," she said. I didn't look up. Because this isn't over yet. She nodded slowly. "Okay, genius. Then what's your move?" I smiled. Not a nice one. Bait. Let me explain. Most people, when they get robbed, shut everything down. Freeze the card. Call the cops. File the reports. And that makes sense. It's logical. But Derek wasn't logical. He was cocky, arrogant, addicted to the performance of luxury. If I shut him down, I'd just warn him. Give him time to shift, hide, deny. But if I left the window open just long enough, I could see how far he'd go. And I could follow the trail. That's when I made the call that changed everything. I dialed my bank again. This time, I asked for the fraud department. After 15 minutes of being bounced around like a beach ball, I got someone who identified himself as Mr. Lowe. Calm voice. Dry humor. The kind of guy who sounded like he drank black coffee and hated everyone equally. Perfect. Hi, Mr. Lowe, I said. I think my husband cloned my debit card and used it to buy luxury goods and a first-class ticket to Paris. Pause. That's a very specific accusation, he said. I didn't laugh. Because it's a very specific crime. He asked for proof. I gave him timestamps, transaction logs, merchant IDs, even a list of surveillance camera locations where I knew Derek would have been recorded. He stayed silent for a long moment. Then said, well, this is going to be interesting. I told him I wasn't ready to freeze the card yet. Another pause. You want to leave the card active? I want to monitor it. Track it. Every charge, every swipe, every fake signature. You do realize he could spend more, right? That's what I'm counting on. He didn't argue. He just said, all right. But you didn't hear it from me. And, just like that, the game was on. I gave Sasha a breakdown of the plan. We wait. We let him think he got away with it. Then we watch. She looked skeptical. You're really gonna let him burn through more of your money? I shook my head. No. I'm gonna let him burn through his future. Because here's what Derek didn't know. The account he used? It wasn't just any account. It was tied to a specific kind of debit card, one I used for fraud training. Yes, I had a real debit card. But the one I kept in my wallet for dummy charges? That card was part of an internal study I'd built during a project with a bank I contracted for. Every transaction on it? Flagged. Every merchant that accepted it? Monitored. The moment he used it, I got everything. Location. Time. Receipt copies. Even cashier IDs. It was like watching a live heist documentary, starring my husband. I set up alerts for every swipe. My phone became a symphony of his downfall. $812 at a boutique in Soho. $1,240 at a high-end sneaker shop. $3,600 for a hotel suite. And then, hours later, another $2,500 at a jewelry store called Noirity or in Midtown. Each charge made me angrier, but also more certain. He wasn't running. He was celebrating. Like he'd just leveled up in some twisted video game. And that's when the idea hit me. Let him level up. Let him win. Because the higher he climbed, the harder he'd fall. And all I had to do? Let the rope out. But what came next? Let's just say he wasn't done spending. Not by a long shot. You really married a man who used your face to unlock your phone while you were sleeping? Sasha didn't even try to hide her disgust. She said it like I'd brought home a dead rat and asked if I could keep it as a pet. She wasn't wrong. I stared at the wine glass in her hand. She'd swapped the tequila for red, and her whole face said, I warned you. And she had. Repeatedly. You remember what I said when you introduced me to him, right? You said he looked like a walking credit score scam. Exactly. She sipped. That's my rule. Never trust a man who moisturizes more than you do, or a man who wears designer belts while unemployed. Your boy checks both boxes. I didn't argue. Couldn't. She'd seen through Derek from day one. To be fair, most people didn't. He had that golden glow, that fake-it-till-you-make-it charm. If charisma were currency, Derek would be on Forbes' list. But Sasha never bought the performance. She saw through the Versace cologne and self-proclaimed branding empire. She saw a man who had nothing and wanted everything handed to him. I pulled my knees up on the couch and watched as she opened her laptop. So what's the plan now? She asked. Track him. Collect evidence. Stay quiet. Then what? Then I end it. She raised an eyebrow. And what? The marriage? Or him? I smiled without smiling. Both. That made her pause. For once, Sasha didn't have a snarky comeback. Because she knew me. Knew I wasn't the scream and break things type. I was the sharpen the knife in silence type. All right, she said. Let's go through everything again. So we did. We mapped out every charge on a whiteboard she kept in her home office, usually for design ideas. Now it looked like an FBI evidence wall. Date, time, store, amount, location. Each line told a story. Each receipt was a breadcrumb. And with each new piece, the pattern got clearer. Derek wasn't hiding. He was flaunting. Luxury purchases in broad daylight. Boutique stores with staff trained to remember faces. He didn't just want stuff, he wanted the experience. He wanted salespeople to fawn over him. Wanted selfies with designer bags. He wanted people to look at him and think, wow, he's made it. But all he really made was a trail. A traceable, time-stamped, surveillance-riddled trail. And the best part? He thought I was still clueless. That's what got me. The arrogance. He believed I wouldn't find out. Or worse, if I did, I wouldn't do anything about it. Like I was some spineless little housewife too in love, or too stupid, to fight back. That's what made me stop feeling hurt. And start feeling focused. I pulled out my old encrypted flash drive and connected it to Sasha's laptop. She watched as I loaded a file labeled Bastion. What's that? She asked. A protocol I designed for a fintech company last year. Basically, it maps a digital fingerprint across multiple systems using metadata from card activity. She blinked. In English, it tracks idiots like Derek. It wasn't even technically public tech yet, but it worked. Within 5 minutes, I had 6 flagged purchases with partial surveillance data attached, merchant uploads, receipt logs, signature comparisons. Derek wasn't just leaving a trail. He was signing his name to it. Literally. And then Sasha asked the question I hadn't wanted to think about. So what are you going to do when he comes back? Because he would come back. He always did. Derek was the kind of man who thought absence made him look mysterious. Like showing up late made him important. He could ghost for days, then walk in like nothing had happened. He'd do it with that same smirk. That same smug confidence that things would just smooth over. He'd probably show up with a souvenir, too. Maybe a perfume bottle from Paris. Or worse, matching luggage. But I'd be ready. Because the best trap is the one they walk into thinking it's a victory lap. And I'd already laid the groundwork. Mr. Lowe from the bank had confirmed that every purchase was being tracked and digitally logged with additional fraud markers. I had full documentation. Timestamped. Downloaded. Backed up. But even that wasn't enough for me. Because Derek wasn't a guy you stop with facts. He was a showman. So I needed a show. That's when I remembered something from a couple years ago, an offhand comment Derek made during dinner with friends. If I ever had the money, he said, I'd disappear to Europe for a month, get a whole new wardrobe, and come back like James Bond. He laughed. Everyone laughed. I didn't. Because I knew he meant it. He'd been planning a fantasy like this for years. All he needed was the right opportunity, the right excuse, and the right victim. And who better than the wife who trusted him completely? At least until now. Sasha looked at me and asked, so what's your endgame? And I told her the truth. I'm not just going to catch him. I'm going to let him think he got away with it. Because humiliation? That sticks longer than handcuffs. I wasn't going to call the cops. I wasn't going to freeze the card. I was going to let Derek keep going. Let him live his fantasy. Let him spend. Let him gloat. Let him feel like he pulled off the perfect heist. And when he walked back through that door, I'd show him exactly who he underestimated. But what came next wasn't just about revenge. It was about the one thing he didn't think I had. Control. You ever realize too late that someone didn't just cross a boundary, but mapped your entire house first? That's what hit me that night. Not the money. Not even the betrayal. The preparation. Because once I slowed everything down, once I replayed that 3 a.m. moment frame by frame in my head, I understood something terrifying. Derek hadn't acted on impulse. He'd rehearsed. Think about it. He didn't fumble. He didn't wake me up. He knew exactly where my purse was. Exactly how to angle my phone to unlock it. Exactly what files to look for on my laptop. That wasn't luck. That was study. And suddenly, all the little moments from the past year started snapping into place like puzzle pieces I'd been too distracted to assemble. Him borrowing my laptop because his was acting weird. Him asking, casually, do you back up your files locally or in the cloud? Him teasing me about being paranoid with my security habits while quietly learning them. I'd thought he was disinterested. He was actually collecting data. And that realization? That was the part that made my hands shake. I went back to my apartment alone that afternoon. Sasha offered to come with me, but I needed to see it for myself. Needed to walk through the space with new eyes. Like a crime scene. Because that's what it was now. I stood in the doorway for a long moment before going in. Everything looked the same. Couch pillows still indented where we'd sat watching TV. His jacket draped over the chair like he'd be back any minute. The normalcy felt obscene. I went straight to my desk. Laptop. Printer. Cable connections. I opened the printer tray. Empty. But when I checked the print history, one document. Printed at 3:14 a.m. The file name made my stomach drop. Welcome_packet_debit_account.pdf. Of course. He hadn't guessed. He hadn't brute forced anything. He'd taken what I'd handed him carelessly, quietly, without realizing it. That's the thing people don't tell you about betrayal. It almost always uses your own trust as the weapon. I sat down slowly, heart pounding, and pulled up my security logs. No malware. No keylogger. No breach. Which meant this wasn't a hack. It was proximity. Access. Intimacy. The kind of access you only give someone you love. I checked the timestamps on my phone unlock history. There it was. 3:13 a.m. Face ID access. Duration. 47 seconds. That's all it took. Less than a minute to compromise my entire financial life. But here's where Derek made his first mistake. Actually, his first of many. Because 2 weeks earlier, I'd switched cards. Not because of him. Not because I suspected anything. Because of a routine audit. I'd been testing a fraud mapping system for a consulting project and needed a live card tied to a sandboxed account. So I ordered a replacement debit card. New number. New expiration. New CVV. The old card, the one Derek physically touched that night, was inactive. Dead. Worthless. Which raised a question that made my pulse spike. If he copied the old card, how did the charges still go through? I checked the documents he printed. He hadn't printed the old card info. He'd printed the new one. Which meant he hadn't just gone through my purse. He'd gone through my files. Specifically, the one place I never thought he'd look. My work folder. The place I assumed he wouldn't touch out of boredom or intimidation. Turns out, arrogance works both ways. I opened the PDF again. There it was. Clear as day. Card number. Expiration. CVV. All neatly formatted on page 2. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Because suddenly, the whole thing made sense. He hadn't cloned my card. He'd recreated it. Printed the information. Memorized it. Possibly even written it down. And then, this part made my skin crawl, he called the bank. Not as himself. As me. I pulled up my call logs. No record. Which meant he used his phone. And then I remembered something else. A conversation from months ago. We were sitting on the couch, watching some true crime show about identity theft. Derek had smirked and said, "Banks are so stupid. All you need is the right tone of voice." I'd rolled my eyes. Now I understood. He hadn't needed my card physically. He'd needed my confidence. My cadence. My personal details. Things only a spouse would know. Date of birth. Address. Security questions. He didn't steal my identity. He borrowed it. And wore it better than I ever had. That's when my phone buzzed. Another alert. $4,200. A luxury hotel in Paris. I stared at the screen. He wasn't slowing down. He was escalating. Which told me something important. He still thought he was safe. He thought the card worked. He thought the account was endless. And he had no idea that every single move he made was being recorded, cataloged, and mirrored back to me in real time. Because here's what Derek didn't know. That replacement card? The one tied to the new number? It wasn't just linked to my checking account. It was linked to a monitored test environment. Every transaction triggered metadata collection, geolocation, terminal ID, merchant upload cycles, signature capture, even audio snippets in some cases, depending on the store. The project was designed to study social engineering fraud, to analyze how people impersonate others to bypass safeguards. And Derek? He walked straight into it, voluntarily, smiling. I watched as a new file populated on my screen. Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport. Terminal 2E. Timestamp, 11:42 a.m. local time. He'd boarded, which meant he was officially gone. Out of the country. Out of reach. At least, that's what he thought. I closed my laptop and stood up. The apartment felt different now. Smaller. Emptier. But also clearer. Like a fog had lifted. Because for the first time since I'd met Derek, I wasn't reacting to him. I was ahead of him. And I realized something else, too. I didn't want to stop him. Not yet. Because the truth was, I hadn't even let him take the best part. He took my card number. He took my money. He took a trip to Europe. But he didn't take what really mattered. He didn't take my leverage. And he had no idea what I was about to do next. Because while Derek was sipping champagne at 30,000 feet, I was setting the final piece into place. And when he came back, he wouldn't just be bragging. He'd be walking into the end of everything. Have you ever watched someone celebrate a victory that doesn't exist? I mean, really celebrate. Smiling. Boasting. Living like they just won the lottery. Except the lottery ticket's fake. And the whole time, they don't even know they're dancing inside a trap you built yourself. That was Derek in Paris. I watched it unfold like a live stream. Except instead of Twitch, it was my bank notifications and surveillance metadata feeding me every smug little step he took. He landed in France and didn't even try to lay low. First purchase? $300 bottle of champagne from a luxury duty-free boutique. Second? Designer sunglasses. Third? $1,000 Montblanc pen. Yes, a pen. It was like he was speed running through a European fashion ad. And I let him. Every single swipe. Because remember what I said? The card he used wasn't linked to my real checking account. It was a sandbox card, a testing tool from my old contract job. Meant to mimic a high-limit account so fraud patterns could be studied in a controlled environment. To Derek, it looked like money. Felt like money. But in reality, every charge he made was being auto-flagged, traced, and reversed before it ever cleared. So yeah, he was racking up luxury purchases like he was the king of Paris. But the joke? None of it was his. None of it was mine either. It was all fake. Monopoly money backed by a data trap. And Derek? He was the lab rat. But here's where it gets even better. The merchants who accepted those charges? They weren't just losing merchandise. They were also legally required, due to the contract they signed for fraud testing, to turn over all associated transaction data. That meant in-store camera angles, customer interaction logs, digital signature pads, and, most deliciously, audio recordings. Every time Derek cracked a joke about his successful startup or told a cashier he was treating himself after a big crypto win, it was recorded. He didn't just leave a trail. He left a documentary. And it was going to be mine. Now, here's the part that truly sealed it for me. Somewhere around day 2 of his Paris shopping spree, I got a flagged call alert from the fraud system. He was trying to call the bank again. But this time, he was panicking. He told the rep he'd gotten an insufficient funds error at a jewelry store and didn't understand why. Said he was approved for high-limit travel and this was unacceptable. And you want to guess the best part? He still pretended to be me. High voice. Slowed cadence. Overpronouncing his vowels. Like a bad impression of his wife. It was insulting, honestly. The rep kept him on the line for 10 minutes while logging every word. I had the transcript in under an hour. Derek. No, I'm Natalie. I need my daily spend limit raised. Rep, can you verify your last transaction? Derek, a bag? A Louis Vuitton bag. For my sister. Nice save, genius. The rep stalled. Told him it would take 48 hours to process. Asked him to call back from his registered device. He hung up angry. Meanwhile, I was across the ocean in New Jersey, grinning like the Joker. Because that was the exact moment I knew. The illusion was starting to crack. He'd thought this was a flawless operation. But slowly, transaction by transaction, he was starting to see the flaws. The invisible wall he hadn't noticed before. The delayed refunds. The blocked authorizations. The denied transfers. And all the while, I wasn't lifting a finger. Just watching. Tracking. Documenting. Derek wasn't stealing from me. He was stealing from a ghost. A phantom account designed to look luxurious on the surface until you tried to live off it. And then? It turned on you. That's when I made my next move. I called Mr. Lowe. You still monitoring Derek's activity? I asked. There was a short pause, then a dry chuckle. Oh, Derek's got a fan club over here. Every department's watching him. One of the interns made a slideshow. I smiled. Good. Then I'm ready for phase 2. Mr. Lowe's voice shifted, just slightly. You sure? Once you pull the trigger, it all collapses. I'm sure. Because it was time. Time to end the game. I scheduled a full account closure for 48 hours later. By that time, Derek would be out of the honeymoon phase of his European fantasy. He'd try to make a large withdrawal. Or transfer money. Or maybe even book a second leg of the trip. But instead, he'd hit a wall. Not a polite one. An immediate, hard account does not exist message across every point of contact. And just for fun, I set the system to send a notification to his email with the subject line. Fraud review complete. Case closed. Charges reversed. Inside? No explanation. Just a single sentence. Thank you for participating in our financial integrity study. I know. Petty. But also poetic. Sasha texted me when I told her. Sasha, you're a villain. I love it. Me. Not a villain. A mirror. Sasha, nah. Mirrors don't charge $8,000 for a fake Rolex. Me, touché. At this point, I didn't even care about the money. It was never really gone. Every dollar was returned to my real account untouched. And everything Derek thought he had was vapor. Digital ash. A fake fortune built on a fake foundation. And he still didn't know it. Because, for now, everything still looked real. The receipts. The bags. The hotel room view. He was still living in the dream. And I let him. Because when he came home, when he swaggered through that door, grinning with his souvenirs and his fresh tan and his smug little speech prepared, that was when I'd get the real prize. Not money. Not revenge. Clarity. Because that's what betrayal gives you if you let it. Not just pain, but perspective. And what came next would finally, truly, shatter his perfect little illusion. With just 6 words. The suitcase was still by the door. That's what got me. Not the empty drawers. Not the missing toiletries. Not even the lingering trace of his cologne that still haunted the hallway like a ghost that hadn't realized it was dead yet. The suitcase. His backup bag. The one he always bragged was ready to go at a moment's notice. In case I have to fly out for a last-minute deal, he'd say, like he was some kind of international fixer. He left it behind. Because Derek didn't think he was leaving for good. He thought he was upgrading. That's exactly the word he used in the note he left on the nightstand. Not a goodbye. Not an explanation. Just one handwritten line in bold, all caps, Derek-style confidence. Gone to upgrade. You'll understand soon. You ever read something that makes you want to punch the paper? I laughed when I saw it. Out loud. Alone. Not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully him. He really thought this was some grand move. Like he was the main character in a luxury drama, disappearing to Europe with a flourish and a one-way ticket. Like I was just a background prop who'd either applaud or disappear. But he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know I'd been watching his every move for 5 days. Didn't know the money he'd spent never left my pocket. Didn't know his upgraded life was nothing more than digital air. And he definitely didn't know I'd been planning his welcome home party since the moment he stepped on that plane. But first, I needed to make sure he didn't come back early. So I did something very un-me. I let him have fun. I even helped it along. See, Derek was still using the card, swiping it like he had a bottomless vault of wealth to draw from. And, because I hadn't shut down the illusion yet, it kept working. But what he didn't realize, the approvals were hollow, temporary, auto-reversed. Most of the stores had already been notified. By the time he left, the entire Paris network was on alert. They just hadn't stopped him yet, because I asked them not to. Why? Because I wanted to track one final charge. The one that would tell me when he was coming home. That charge came on a Thursday. For $1,850. Emirates Airlines. First class. Paris to JFK. He was coming back. 1 week after he left, right on schedule. Arrogant enough to fly back first class again. Arrogant enough to use the same fake fortune that got him there. I tracked the booking number. Matched it to his travel itinerary. His departure time was 9:05 a.m. local Paris time. Arrival at JFK? 11:47 a.m. Friday. Which gave me exactly 24 hours to set the stage. You'd be surprised how easy it is to ruin someone's comeback tour when you have the receipts. Literal ones. I printed them all. Every transaction. Every audio log. Every surveillance frame with him cheesing in front of a cash register like he'd just won the jackpot. I laid them out on the dining table, lined them up like exhibits in a courtroom. Then I went one step further. I emailed the hotel he'd been staying at. Politely. Formally. Dear Sir or Madam, I believe the man staying in room 617 has been using a compromised debit card associated with a fraud monitoring project. You may want to contact your billing department before settlement fails. Documentation attached. Sincerely, Natalie. And because I'm thorough, I BCC'd their fraud department and the company's corporate office. I never heard back. I didn't need to. I already knew the fallout was coming. And as for Derek? He was still clueless. I checked his Instagram. He'd posted a photo with the caption, "Leveling up, the view is better from here, clinking glasses." The photo? Him on a hotel balcony. Shirtless. A drink in one hand, shopping bags in the background. And this was the final detail, the one that told me everything I needed to know. He tagged me. As if I'd be proud. As if I was part of this ridiculous charade. That's how sure he was that I'd still be here. Still quiet. Still loyal. Still dumb. And that's when I felt something click inside me. This wasn't about the money anymore. This was about how low he thought of me. This was about how small he thought I was. The man stole $60,000 from me, forged my identity, ran off to Europe using my face to unlock my life. And still had the nerve to believe I'd be waiting like a fool with a glass of wine and a smile. Nah. I had something else waiting. A different kind of drink. One I couldn't wait to serve. The next morning, I got up early. Showered. Dressed. Cleaned the house. Not because I missed him. Because I wanted the setting perfect. Every receipt was still on the table. The printed boarding pass. The call transcripts. Even a freeze frame of his Crypto King hotel brag video. I made coffee. Sat by the window. And waited. 11:52 a.m., a car pulled into the driveway. He didn't even Uber. Took a black town car. Probably on credit. I watched him step out, sunglasses on, custom luggage in hand, shirt a little too unbuttoned. He paused before unlocking the door, probably rehearsing his speech. The door swung open. He stepped in with a smirk, tan glowing, and said the first words I'd hear from him in a week. Loved the upgrade. Smug. Perfectly delivered. Like a movie line. He expected awe. Admiration. Awe. Instead, I pointed to the table. Hope you kept the receipts. He blinked. Saw the papers. And in that half-second of silence, I saw it. His brain catching up to the moment. And then I said, "You used the wrong card, Derek." He tilted his head. What? I smiled, calm and clean. You didn't steal my money. You used the sandbox card. The test one. The one tied to a fraud research account. I stood up, walked toward the table, tapped one document with my finger. Every dollar you spent was fake. Every approval was flagged. Every swipe was tracked. And now, everything you touched? Gone. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. So I added one last line. Soft. Precise. Congratulations. You played yourself. But what came next? Oh, Derek had one last surprise in store. And even I didn't see it coming. You know that face someone makes when the floor drops out from under them, but they're still trying to act like they're standing on solid ground? That was Derek. Mouth half open. Brows furrowed just enough to look confused, but not enough to admit guilt. And I could see it, his brain scrambling for an exit ramp. Some slick comeback. Some spin. Because Derek never lost. He rewrote reality to fit the narrative where he won. Always. But now, surrounded by stacks of receipts, fraud alerts, audio logs, and frozen screenshots of his every Parisian purchase, there wasn't a single way out. Still, he tried. Of course he did. Babe, he said, stepping forward with that old familiar charm, I think you're confused. I didn't flinch. Oh, I'm crystal clear. He gestured toward the table, laughing nervously. This? It's not what you think. No? I picked up one paper, his Emirates boarding pass, and held it between two fingers like it was radioactive. Because what I think is that you used my identity to commit financial fraud across multiple countries. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. I pointed to another paper. $6,000 at Louis Vuitton. Another. $4,800 at the Hotel Balzac. Another. 3 different jewelry stores, Derek. 3. He crossed his arms, tone shifting. I told you I had a plan. This was all an investment, branding, exposure, travel networking. Networking. You don't get it. People in Paris, they notice. I had meetings. I couldn't believe it. He was actually trying to repackage it as a business trip. This man spent $60,000 of fake money on designer shoes and room service, and he was trying to sell it like it was a startup strategy. You used a cloned card to impersonate me to our bank, Derek. No. I have the call logs. I have the recording. He froze. I watched the words hit like a slap. I stepped closer. You said you were me. Changed your voice. Lied to override the fraud triggers. He took a step back, realizing now that I wasn't just angry. I was prepared. I wasn't hurt. I was armed. You used the wrong card, I repeated. It was linked to a fraud environment. It wasn't real money. He blinked. And then, slowly, it sank in. You mean, all those charges? Auto-flagged. Reversed. Logged. Tracked. Every store you scammed? Already notified. Your name is on every receipt. Your face on every camera. His lips parted. Then he said it. The most Derek line in the history of Derek. But they gave me the stuff. I stared at him. Yeah, and now they're taking it back. And then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed. He checked it. Eyes darted across the screen. Then again. And again. Another buzz. Another notification. I could see it, his entire world crashing down in slow motion. Refund alerts. Account closures. Store reversals. Payment failed messages. He looked up, panicked. You set me up? No, Derek. You set yourself up. I just gave you the space to do it. He looked around the room, like maybe some hidden camera crew was going to jump out and tell him it was all a prank. But this wasn't a show. This was his consequence. You humiliated me, he snapped suddenly, tone shifting to defense. You made me look stupid. I tilted my head. You made yourself look stupid. I just kept the receipts. He scoffed. Unbelievable. You'd sabotage your own husband. You're not my husband. The silence that followed was sharp. Clean. Final. Because in that moment, the last thread snapped. He looked at me, really looked at me, for what might have been the first time in a long time. And what he saw was someone he couldn't manipulate anymore. Not with charm. Not with shame. Not even with guilt. I let him stew in that silence. And then I dropped the final bomb. There's a ticket on the table. He glanced over. An envelope. Inside? A coach ticket. One way. No upgrades. No perks. Departure, JFK. Destination, Cleveland. Date, tomorrow. I smiled. It's in your name. Paid in full. My gift to you. He stared at it like it might explode. You want me to leave? I want you to understand something, Derek. You didn't just steal from me. You stole you from me. The version of you I believed in? The one I defended? That man's been gone for a long time. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because what could he say? Everything he'd built, his little empire of style and smoke, was collapsing. Not because I exposed him, but because he never built it on anything real to begin with. He grabbed his bag slowly, the one he thought he'd come home with as a trophy. I didn't stop him. I watched. Because there was nothing left to say. But just as he reached the door, he turned. One last time. You think you won? No, I said. I know I did. Then I shut the door behind him. And just like that, the man who once bragged about leveling up walked out of my life, back to economy class. But what happened after? That's where things got really satisfying. Because the fallout wasn't over. Not even close. You ever feel the moment someone realizes they were never in control? It's like watching a magician flub their final trick. Except instead of pulling a rabbit from the hat, they pull out a receipt. And not just any receipt. The one that proves it was your show all along. That was Derek's exit. But it wasn't the end. Not even close. See, when he walked out with that cheap suitcase full of luxury fraud dreams, he didn't know the card he used, the one that gave him his little Paris fantasy, had already detonated behind him. And I mean that figuratively and professionally. Because let me tell you what kind of card he actually used. You ready? It wasn't just a dummy debit card. It wasn't just a sandbox test account. It was part of an active forensic sting program. Yeah, the card wasn't just set up to simulate high-value behavior. It was part of a broader research initiative I'd been consulting for. A project designed to bait social engineering fraudsters, test institutional blind spots, and collect real-time behavioral data on people who thought they were smarter than the system. And Derek? He didn't just walk into it. He starred in it. Unwittingly. Let me break it down for you. There's this concept we use in fraud detection called a honeypot. It's a trap. A decoy system. You make it look valuable, juicy, vulnerable. Just exposed enough to draw in the kind of person who thinks they've found a gold mine. But what they've really found? A cage. The debit card Derek cloned had been inactive for over a year. But behind the scenes? It was reactivated as part of a closed system tracking study. Every charge passed through a forensic filter. Every merchant that accepted it was briefed, some even embedded with silent tracking tools. And the best part? The card ID was flagged at a national level. It wasn't visible to him. But the moment he made that first approved purchase, it triggered a cascading alert. Across banks. Across merchant platforms. Across financial compliance teams. So while Derek was sipping espresso on a Paris balcony, thinking he'd pulled off the scam of the century, a network of analysts was building a case file with his name, face, voice, and digital footprint. And not because I called them. Because he walked straight into the spotlight. All I did was let the system work. See, he thought he was smarter than the average thief. Thought he was different. Not some back-alley scammer with a ski mask, but a visionary. But you know what real visionaries don't do? Leave a trail so thick you can print it in color-coded folders. Let me tell you what was in those folders. His call to the bank impersonating me? Transcribed. Audio flagged. Matched against my actual voice profile. His in-store transactions? Footage acquired. Time synced. ID matched against passport scans. Even his social media? Scraped. Indexed. Cross-referenced with geolocation metadata. He documented his own fraud for me. Voluntarily. And I'm not the only one who noticed. After Derek left, I got a message from Mr. Lowe. Remember him? Fraud department guy. Dry sense of humor. Professional shark. His message? Thought you'd like to know. Your boy's been upgraded to a flagged entity. Investigators are watching. Might not hear anything for a while, but he'll feel it. Eventually. I replied. Can't wait for the look on his face when that first denial hits him mid-purchase. Because that's the thing. It doesn't happen right away. You don't get tackled at the register or dragged from the departure gate. No. It starts with little things. Card declines. Account holds. Weird calls from customer service. The feeling that something's off. Until slowly, quietly, the walls close in. And that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't need to press charges. Didn't need to sue. Because the system Derek thought he could outsmart? It doesn't move fast. But it doesn't forget. And now he's in it. Permanently. The last I heard, he tried to apply for a new business card, denied. Tried to book a hotel for a networking event, flagged. His accounts? Under audit. His passport? Probably next. All while I sit comfortably, untouched, with a full refund and a clean slate. Because I didn't chase revenge. I built the stage. Set the lighting. Handed him the mic. And let him perform. And he delivered. So yeah, he bragged about the upgrade. But in the end, he didn't upgrade his life. He upgraded my freedom. And all it cost me was patience. But if you think that's the end, not quite. Because after everything settled down, after the chaos faded, I found something else. Something that made my blood run cold. And it wasn't in Paris. It was in my own house. There's a silence after betrayal. Not the awkward kind. Not the I don't know what to say kind. It's a silence that hums. Heavy. Full. Like the air is holding its breath for what comes next. That was my house after Derek left. Quiet. Still. But not empty. Because just when I thought I'd finished cleaning up the mess, I found it. Tucked in the back of a drawer he never used. The one I kept my warranties and old tech receipts in. It was a USB stick. Unlabeled. Matte black. Ordinary. But nothing about Derek was ever ordinary. I should have tossed it. I should have burned it. But curiosity? That's how all this started, isn't it? So I plugged it in. And what I saw confirmed everything. He'd been planning this. Not for a week. Not for a month. For almost a year. Spreadsheets. Password logs. Notes about my habits. Screenshots of my login screens. Even a chart of my work hours labeled best window, deep sleep cycle, 2 to 3:30 a.m. He wasn't just taking advantage of a moment. He was designing the perfect moment. A blueprint for betrayal. It made me sick. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Because somewhere deep down I'd known. The late nights. The love bombing that always came after a lie. The subtle erasures of my boundaries. It was all there. But I'd refuse to look. We all do it, don't we? Ignore the patterns when we love the person drawing them. Forgive one too many red flags. Laugh off the guilt trips. Call it a phase. Call it working on things. But let me ask you something. What happens when you finally stop calling it love and start calling it what it is? Control. Because that's what this was. Not just financial theft. Not just lies. Derek didn't just want money. He wanted to prove he could take it. That I wouldn't stop him. That I'd be too shocked or too in love or too unsure of myself to fight back. He was counting on the version of me that existed 3 years ago. Quiet. Accommodating. Reasonable. But that version died the moment I watched him unlock my phone with my sleeping face. And what grew in her place wasn't angry. Wasn't broken. She was ready. And now, months later, looking back, I don't feel stupid. I feel proud. Not because I caught him, but because I didn't let him break me. I didn't fall apart. I didn't scream or beg or self-destruct. I stayed calm, collected, strategic. Because you don't need to raise your voice when you're holding the truth in your hands. You just need to let it speak. That's what all those receipts were. Not evidence of weakness. Proof of clarity. Proof that I saw him for what he was and that I refused to look away anymore. So, what happened to Derek? Well, let's just say, he's not leveling up anymore. He's spending more time dealing with chargeback investigations, flagged bank accounts, and repeated identity verifications than posting thirst traps with champagne glasses. The system moves slow. But it moves. And now? Every door he tries to open triggers another look back at the door he kicked open behind him. As for me, I'm good. Better than good. I closed all shared accounts. Scrubbed my digital footprint. Strengthened my security system tenfold. And emotionally, I feel lighter. Not just because he's gone, but because I let myself stop pretending. I don't need someone to complete me. Especially not someone who treats trust like a loophole and love like leverage. And now, this story, my story, is out there. Because I know I'm not the only one. I know some of you are sitting in your bedrooms, staring at a phone you wish you could unlock without a pit in your stomach. Some of you are wondering if you're crazy, or paranoid, or just too sensitive. But let me tell you something. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're not overreacting. If something feels off, it probably is. And you don't need to wait for $60,000 to disappear before you trust your gut. Trust you. That voice in your head? The one that whispers when something doesn't feel right? That's your defense system. Don't mute it. Don't apologize for it. Sharpen it. And if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, let them find someone else to manipulate. Because you're done being someone's playground. You're the fence. You're the lock. You're the person they'll regret crossing. So, what would I say to Derek now? Nothing. He doesn't deserve words. He deserves silence. Because silence? That's what happens after the show ends. And me? I'm already on to the next chapter. No lies. No secrets. Just peace. And maybe a bottle of wine with my sister, who still insists I should have changed the locks while he was in the air. She might have a point. Now, if you've made it this far, I've got one question for you. What would you have done? Would you have called him out? Cancelled the card? Confronted him at the airport? Or would you, like me, have built a trap so perfect it let him dig his own grave? Drop your answer in the comments. Because trust me, I'm reading every single one. And if you liked this story, you're gonna love what happened when my ex tried to fake a medical emergency to win me back. Spoiler alert. He picked the wrong nurse. Subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll see you in the next one.